AI will transform a lot of industries and things. And I think the speed, the velocity, it's going to be skyrocketed. So in the next 5-6 years, like this decade for sure, the life will not be the same. Right now, like with AI not being self-aware, still the impact is incredible, right? But once we cross that line, the threshold, the world won't be the same. So I believe the advancement of mental health and all of other industries, the speed of change in those industries will be incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to grasp whatever we can right now.
Welcome to the Global Affair podcast, brought to you by Love Out Loud, the world's largest love-based movement, actualizing a civilization of love by 2030. My name's Nicole Gibson, and join me and some of the world's brightest minds as we bring some of the most important and controversial conversations of our time into a space of unity. It's important to know that as your host, this isn't about my personal opinion or bias, but rather an opportunity to listen with love, honesty, curiosity, and reveal the true universal experience us humans have amongst the differences. So if you love the show, please let us know by giving us a rating and tell us how to make this conversation easier for other people to jump into as well. And with that, let's get it. Kristina, welcome to the Global Affair. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for inviting me. It's my pleasure and honor.
Of course. I think we want to first preface this by saying that this is an explorative conversation. And although you're writing a thesis, an investment thesis on some of these topics, which I'm super excited to get into and hear some of your thoughts on. And of course, you have a legal background. So you've been, trained to understand how to think ethically and what ethics mean. And I'd love to touch on that, throughout this episode as well. So I think this is a consideration that not many people even know, how to think in terms of ethics and what is moral and ask these conversations. So also, I think, it's important that we have space without, needing to have the answer straight away, to just explore these conversations, keeping in mind that ethical AI, the integration of health data in consumer products, which is becoming more and more available. Governments don't even have policies for these things right now. So I think it's okay that we don't have all the answers, and it's okay that we have conversations that are more about the back and forth and asking the right questions. And I actually invite any listener that's listening to this episode of The Global Affair to also keep that in mind and to be a part of the conversation. So just wanted to preface that before we jump in. And Kristina, before we go sort of more deeply into the fundamentals of ethics and AI, I'd love to hear a bit about your background. What brought you into this conversation, this space?
Yeah, so after leaving Big Law February this year, I worked at Cooley and I was representing startups and venture funds. And I felt that I want to be a venture investor. I went to a solo trip in Brazil to write my investment thesis and kind of remove all of the expectations from myself to pursue the next big, prestigious, another highly paid thing. And think, what do I really want in my heart? What impact I want to make in this world? I knew that I want to create bigger impact, but what is it that touches my soul? And AI and health, and specifically mental health, is very close to my soul, especially mental health, because personally, I went through my dad's passing away, and he had that mental health, not disease, but mental health issue, that he was depressed, and he had those obsessive thoughts about having cancer, and miraculously, it almost felt like he manifested that cancer. He was diagnosed and died in a matter of 2 weeks with the last stage of cancer, lymphatic cancer. And he was 56 years old, absolutely healthy, handsome. Nobody could think that could happen. He drove himself to the hospital. But what was the beginning of that story is the thoughts about, I'm alone, I don't see the meaning in this life, while having family, career, and everything. So for me, it was super hard to understand, why would you feel that way if you have everything that you need? So that not understanding how a person can live in the hell And then I realized that some of my friends who also have amazing life, they are going through those struggles. And because I was very close to my dad and we tried everything to help him, and before he was diagnosed with cancer, he even had suicidal thoughts, which was incomprehensible for me. Now I understand that. And I want to, if there is one thing that I can do on this earth, is to help people to overcome that isolation, mental health challenges. And I believe that with the advancement of AI, we have opportunity to understand better how our brain operates and the system, the body as a whole. Because pharmaceutical solutions, they are not working. All of this antidepressants, they're not working. Yoga, meditation, and nutrition, I think they help to some extent, but I have friends who do all of that and they're still struggling. And because I was trying to help my dad with the therapy and with everything, it became very clear and acute to me that there is no clear solution to mental health epidemic that we have in the world, not only, and especially in the United States. And the amount of health, wealth, and everything external cannot solve that issue. So my hope, and that's why when I came back from Brazil, I wrote my first draft of the thesis, I started socializing it, and I started advising a couple of companies, startups on the intersection of AI and health, because I believe that AI could provide some insights into how our body operates and can help us to come up with solutions that would hopefully solve the root cause of mental health crisis that we are undergoing.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that personal story. And the journey with your father was AI sort of already when you were supporting him through that journey. Was this in your frame of thinking, or when did that start to kind of come to you as a potential pathway to better understand some of these complex challenges?
It came up during drafting of my investment thesis. When I realized that, and I started interviewing people, investors and founders in the space, scientists, I started talking to people who worked with Elon Musk on Neuralink and what are the challenges they're going through. And one of the two challenges that I've been told about, first, we don't have enough data and understanding. We even haven't scratched the surface of what is inside of the brain.
Yes.
So like, okay, we can't come up with a solution if we don't know what is the problem. And FDA approval is needed to kind of go inside and take a look, and the regulatory part is a problem. But overall, we just don't have enough data, enough scans of our brain to even go into that and realize what is there. And from that perspective, I thought that if AI was taught using human brain, maybe it will help us to understand and go inside of our brain and give us some insights.
I'm so curious. I mean, Neuralink is kind of leading the charge in so many ways around, essentially transhumanism, the merging of human consciousness with artificial intelligence. And I know you and I have had a couple of kind of robust conversations around that nature, and I want to go into that. But what were some of the challenges that the people that you interviewed that were working on that project highlighted?
Yeah. And by the way, I'm so excited that Neuralink finally got FDA approval to test on humans. Going to be inserting the hardware in the brain. The robot will be used for that. And before it was not possible, and I also talked with people who work on Neuralink's team, the problem was taking it from the brain, kind of exerting that. And
putting the brainstem into the microchip?
You can put microchip in the brain, but how you take it out? So they wanted to make sure we can take it out.
Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah. So a couple of days ago, he finally got the approval. Last year, he was rejected. But two companies, Synchron and BlackRock, if I'm not mistaken, they're already testing their technology on humans, and their missions related. They want to use technology to augment brain capabilities and to translate thoughts into actions. When you can think about something and you type just by thinking, you're driving a car, or if you're paralyzed, you can move by thinking.
Yeah.
So that's already a reality.
Yeah. I mean, Monkey was playing Pong with its brain, right?
A lot of monkeys died before.
Sure.
One of them got lucky. So they wants to make sure that humans won't die while we are on this process.
Yeah, of course.
And that's one of the you asked me about the challenges. One of the challenges is that FDA protects people, right? We don't want to try anything on humans until it's reasonably safe. And we definitely don't want to allow the technology to be used broadly and then harm people.
Yeah.
And it's the balance between what are the pros and cons. For example, if a person paralyzed completely, then it probably makes sense for a person to try it out as opposed to me trying it out to augment my ability to focus. Maybe as a healthy human, I should not put that risk.
The cost-benefit ratio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a consideration when the FDA look at technology, or are there kind of strict guidelines that regardless of the technology, it's kind of uniform? That if there's a risk at all, above X% on human life, then it's not considered? Or do they have a part of their framework, a consideration of what could this support someone with versus what are the risks?
That is a good question. And I don't have the answer because all of these things, they're super new. So you don't, these are the first instances when FDA looks at those cases and evaluating the
leading edge.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after these approvals, everything else will be much easier to get the approval of. For example, the way one of the companies that I'm advising on the ground, they use AI to detect epilepsy. And what we're doing, I'm actually coming back to Brazil in June, and we're gonna get their version of FDA approval and work with hospitals to get scans of brain and get that data, because in Brazil, it's just easier. And once you have it done in Brazil, it's easier to get the approval, FDA approval here in the US.
Yeah, they have a relationship. Actually, we're working with a third party that is doing some clinical trials potentially for us. And they run their experiments in Brazil, but they have a relationship with the FDA that it's actually it's recognized as if it was done in the US, which is quite cool.
Yeah, and we're gonna have meetings with hospitals, and we already have the relationships there. It's just much easier to get it done there. And as I said, one of the biggest challenges is that we don't have enough brain scans.
Yeah.
And analyze, and to be able to analyze them and create the models. And one of the advantages, for example, how AI can use to detect epilepsy. Imagine you can have on your app, you can have on your phone an app that will detect epilepsy 10 minutes before the seizure would happen.
Yeah.
Not only that, that is happening right now, or you have it, but prevent that from happening, notify you so you can take some measures.
Yeah, incredible. And so your fascination with AI and the brain in particular, does this sort of extend to any kind of disease that has a link to it, to neurology in some way? So
my initial fascination and mission, I would say, to change how humanity uses brain and augment our human capabilities. But you need to start where you are. And right now, besides, Neuralink, Synchron, BlackRock, there are not that many players.
Sure.
Yeah, and you have to have a lot of resources to get into that. So I want to be an early stage investor, and then there are not that many early stage companies that I can invest in, or I can raise a fund.
I can recommend one.
It's really hard to find those companies. That's why I just start broadly AI and health, but my heart is in mental health and helping people with advancement of neuroscience, neurotechnology, and AI to address that mental health challenges, but also even broadly to help people to be well holistically.
Sure.
Body, mind, soul, whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah, an elevation of consciousness.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the actual kind of the thesis as you see it, or at least, up until this point, what you've explored in the thesis, it's a big jump to go from corporate law. So I'm going to become a VC and start a fund, and it's a recent journey, right? Share with us what that push was. Like it wasn't kind of like I'll see if I can leave the corporate world and kind of ease my way into becoming a VC. It's a huge jump for you.
It is, and it is not at the same time, because as a corporate lawyer, I was always in this world. I've been representing startups and venture funds for the past 7+ years.
Okay.
So I'm
learning all the mistakes.
Yeah, so I'm already part of the ecosystem. I'm an insider. So I have that competitive advantage that I've been representing technology and life sciences companies and top tier venture funds. And I worked at Cooley, which is top tier law firm, which is synonymous with venture and tech work. Very lucky. And before that, I was an associate general counsel at 2 venture-backed startups. So I've always
in the US?
Yeah, everything in the US. Yeah, I immigrated from Russia in 2014. I went to USC, got my law degree, worked for federal judge at the US Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. And I realized litigation is not for me. And I want to be in startups. And I went straight to startups. And I became a generalist, but then I thought that I want to be an expert in something. And that's how I joined the law firm, to learn how to do fundraising, what is market, to become best at what startups do from the legal perspective.
Yeah.
And I think now I'm in a good position to transition, but at the same time, me being a venture investor would be venture investor / lawyer, because as a venture investor, everyone has, capital, everyone has network if you're a venture investor, but you have to have superpower that attracts founders to you. That's the key proprietary deal flow, right? Why founders would come to you? Why would you be one of the 10 people that founders will call? And I was...
Listen up, founders.
No, initially when I left Big Law, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do the law. But what turns out, even the neuroscience company, the founder who came to me, that person came to me because of my law background. My friend, who is a general partner of a VC fund, he asked me to help that company. And other people, other founders came the same way.
Yeah.
And I take a combination. I do charge, like some hourly fee as lawyers do, but I also take equity. So I don't charge for every phone call, like introduction. So, I'm being a strategic advisor for founders. And I charge for legal work when I need to draft something. So our incentives are aligned. And quite honestly, that's a great transition to be a venture investor, because my decision to offer someone to give me equity instead of paying the whole bill, that is me taking a bet on someone.
Yeah.
And I think that model gives me that smoother transition because I still generate cash flow. I haven't joined the VC fund. I was offered to raise a fund with a partner, but I don't feel right now that I want to raise my own fund, just because, again, I'm very ethical as a lawyer. I believe that once I've worked at a top tier fund, or at least I've been in that industry for a while, doing not only legal, but the business side, I can confidently say, okay, here is my thesis, here is how I source the companies, and it's based on experience.
Yeah.
And then I would be comfortable raising money from investors. Because for me, it's about personal conviction. I don't care what others think, but am I convicted that that's the right path?
Yeah.
So that is my journey right now. So while I'm, advising startups, and I have also just legal clients, not only, combination of equity and cash. Again, I don't offer that to everyone. And I'm writing the investment thesis. I'm networking with VC funds. So later this year, maybe next year, we'll see how it goes. I might join a VC fund, and hopefully the thesis that I'm drafting, hopefully it will resonate with general partners of that fund. And another thing that why I do want to work at a VC fund before starting my own, in everything that I do, I optimize for people, working with the best people. And by best, I mean not only like smart, but kind, who've been and seen it all. So I do want to work with people who've done it, have seen it from the business perspective, the life cycle of a startup. I've seen the life cycle from the legal perspective, but due to the nature of me billing in 6-minute increments, I don't necessarily know what happened before the term sheet and after the term sheet.
Like a lot of ego deaths and chaos, no doubt. Yeah. Yeah. I really love that. And I have a big admiration for that, intentionality. I feel as a founder, it's missing. A lot of the time, a founder's journey, you feel alone, and when you call your lawyer, you're thinking, this 10-minute phone call is going to cost me
$1,000 at least, like 6 minutes, like $75.
Yeah, exactly. And it's stressful because it's not something that you can bypass. It's an essential part of setting a company up the right way, negotiating agreements the right way. And I think the disconnect between a founder and their legal team also at times would no doubt put into question the deep ethical consideration that might otherwise be there if there was a lawyer such as yourself that was willing to kind of be in the pit with the founder. So where did you begin in starting to draft your thesis. You had these conversations, you know.
You will be laughing.
So it's a big undertaking, man.
Yes. So I went to Brazil, and the last 5 days allocated for investment thesis, I went to Trancoso, which is a place similar to Tulum, but like 10 years ago.
Okay.
And
on the spiritual front.
And I had quality time with ChatGPT.
Okay. And then nice.
Yeah, like those conversations about the meaning of life.
You and ChatGPT. Beautiful.
Yes. And I just started, honestly, throughout my trip in Brazil, what I forced myself to do is to let go of the desire to be productive, of that push to, jump on the next, because I had a couple of offers when I allowed big law. I could like join a startup as a CEO. I could join a VC fund. And I had that, desire to do the next prestigious thing. And I fought it because this time around, I want to do it intentional. I want to do it my way, and I want to make an impact. And I just started writing on my phone. Then I would walk, like, what change do I want to see in the world?
What's your personal philosophy?
My personal philosophy is that we need to help people to elevate consciousness in a way that we realize our own power. The power of our thoughts, the power of our brain, the power to define our own life, that we are the masters of this life. We are the creators.
Yeah.
That's the deep philosophical thing. And one of the challenges, I think there are many challenges in the world, right? The economical disparity, everything. I can't solve everything, but my personal story, how I was touched on a personal level, was my dad. And I know that despite the economical and other, challenges, if you don't have the right, I wouldn't say mindset necessarily, but you're not in the right mind, that prevents you from achieving anything in life. Because if you're healthy mentally and physically, you can put me in any country, any planet, and I will start from scratch. When I moved to the United States, I didn't know a single person. I didn't even speak English fluently. So when I was taking the bar exam, like at least 20% of the words I didn't know. Yeah, so it was like, I was just imagining, like, this word maybe means something, but let me just guess. But because I was lucky to have that mindset, I had fears for sure. I had anxiety, but I'm still healthy. And I believe that people have that power to get that power, believing in themselves and having that power. But I also felt that darkness that was from my dad. I know how it's hard to get yourself out of that darkness. And it could be from, I don't know, this balance of hormones. It could be from whatever it is. Yeah. But I want people to realize their power and use that power to give their gift to the world. That's the deepest message that I wrote. And then I started just reading the articles, scheduling calls with scientists, with investors, with founders. And I started identifying, okay, what is the current landscape? What are the trends? What are the trends that can be investable in the next 5-10 years? Because we also, when we invest venture capital, you need to make sure that you return money to investors. So I might believe in some philosophical things, but for example, neurotechnology, it's really hard to return a fund if you invest in that, right? So I have to be mindful of that, but I have a long-term perspective on that. I believe in the industry. I believe in that impact, that changing how people use their brain, augmented capabilities of human brain. Yeah. And, I do whatever I can right now with whatever I have. Yeah. And that's the perspective that I think helps me to, just read the books, meet the people, write what I know, research, and start where you are. And I think with that foundation, AI will transform a lot of industries and things. And I think the speed, the velocity, it's going to be skyrocketed. So in the next 5-6 years, like this decade for sure, the life will not be the same. Right now, like with AI not being self-aware, still the impact is incredible, right? But once we cross that line, the threshold, the world won't be the same. So I believe the advancement of mental health, and all of other industries, the speed of change in those industries will be incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to grasp whatever we can right now.
Yeah, I think the world is for the most part not prepared. I was speaking at an event in LA a couple of weeks ago, and one of the amazing speakers, Brian Johnson, he's really big into longevity and wellness tech. And
Colonel, right? He's testing everything himself to
correct.
be
Blueprint.
Yeah, and the brain-computer interface as well.
Yeah. So he has some really interesting views, and one of his reasons why he is going so full on with Blueprint is to basically, teach people that we need now to optimize the human system, because what we're competing against, if you see it as a competition with the landscape of technology, if we don't increase our ability to perform and to process information, we really are becoming obsolete in many ways. And I was talking about his viewpoint, which I, in a lot of ways, fundamentally agree with, that humans, up until this point, we've kind of understood the world and problems and challenges, and also our projection of the future in this kind of linear way, that 1 + 1 = 2, and because this happened and that happened in the past, this is most likely going to happen in the future. And we're moving into this reality, this world, with the advancement of artificial intelligence, where we're no longer going to be able to predict. It's no longer going to be a linear kind of process, that the decision making that could happen from AI could in a second, fundamentally change the landscape of what our world looks like. And I'm not sure many people are fully aware that this is most likely going to happen in the next decade or two.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows those answers. It's impossible to predict.
We can't predict it.
Yeah. But I think that's why it's important to work in parallel, advancing the technology, but also put in place ethical considerations and railroads to make sure that we controlling the speed.
Sure.
And we are defining how AI will be used. How can it help us to maybe...
How can it be human-centered?
And how can it delegate the things that do not serve us?
Sure.
I think in the past decades, we've been extremely busy producing a lot of stuff. And it might not be necessarily like the high-quality stuff, not necessarily good for the planet. And maybe we should stop producing and stop just jumping as a monkey, and we should think long-term strategically and utilize AI to help us to free up our time so we can go inward, so we can be self-aware, because AI will be self-aware if we allow them, but for humanity to be self-aware, to be intentional,
to have meaning.
Yeah, because it's really hard to have a meaning or self-awareness or even mindfulness if you're constantly busy on social media, checking your email, constantly producing. Because whatever we're producing, the reality, it's going to be much worse than what AI can produce. Right now, from the legal perspective, right, the GPT already passed the bar exam, so it is as good as a first-year lawyer without experience, but it can learn 24/7, which human cannot.
Yeah.
So it is obvious that in a couple of years it will be better than most of the lawyers.
What is this going to mean for the future of law? I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but I'm genuinely curious when it comes to assessing someone's case. Evidence, has been a moral kind of component. It's very difficult for a jury, for instance, or potentially even a judge, to not have that human kind of bias. What happens? Will law, do you think, move into a world where we rely solely on AI, purely on the black and white and the facts to judge someone's case?
I believe that we shouldn't. And that's why we should. Can it be? Is it possible? Yes, but I think it shouldn't be allowed.
Yes.
Because empathy, right? Humanity, I think we shouldn't outsource those things. We should outsource research, writing. A few days ago, even yesterday, I think there was a case that a lawyer used ChatGPT to produce legal documents for the court, and it cited the cases that never existed. The lawyer did not. The lawyer didn't check, and when the opposite party brought it up to the judge's attention, judge was like, "What the hell? What's wrong with you? These are non-existent cases. Where did you take it?" like, yeah, that was ChatGPT, and I didn't realize that it could be incorrect.
Is it what's considered a hallucination inside artificial intelligence?
No, but so I use ChatGPT for my legal work, and it makes a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of mistakes. It apologizes. It learns. So
It apologizes to you.
It always apologizes. Seriously, it's like a first-year associate at Big Law. It's really smart. It's really fast. It doesn't know. It doesn't know what's important, what's not, what's right, what's not, but has a lot of information. So sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not, but it doesn't know when it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
And because it's generative AI, right? It produces things. So if you, for example, give a prompt, help me to argue this case, it might come up with stuff that's just not even real. And if a person doesn't double check that, these are the mistakes. So it was the first in the history of courts when, a lawyer just submitted papers that cited non-existent cases. And it's also ethical consideration because you cannot provide false information to the court. That's violation of law. And the lawyer's like, I didn't know that it could be false, but it is so obvious, honestly, that you can't rely on ChatGPT to just, do the legal work for you. It is, because it's wrong.
Yeah, but as you just mentioned, it will get more and more intelligent, but it's super interesting. And I personally really agree that what is unique to humanity, our humanity, our empathy, our ability to really understand emotional intelligence, these things, if we were to sacrifice or, outsource these parts of us, I see it as us giving away our sovereignty, a part of our spirit.
Yeah.
And I know you and I have had some conversations on that. And I'd love to hear some of your perspectives, when it comes to merging AI with human consciousness. Yeah. What are your thoughts around that and how it relates to what is sovereign about us? This inner technology that we have that, my belief is when we're fully aligned, we are infinite, we're unstoppable.
Yeah, invincible. That is a really great question. And when I was starting to write my thesis, my first idea was we have to advance technology as fast as we can, move as fast as we can. Just like, let's just augment our capabilities. Let's be superhumans. And then I started talking to people. And one of the people who influenced me a lot was Nita Farahani. She wrote the book, The Battle for Your Brain, defending the right to think freely in the age of neurotechnology. Because with all the integration comes a question, human rights, right? We have the last freedom that hasn't been kind of violated, maybe social media kind of trying to get there, but still we have freedom of thought. Nobody knows what our thoughts, although marketers are trying to predict.
But very Orwellian.
Yeah. But with neurotechnology, if we have something injected in us, or we have even technology that wearable, right, that track brain waves, EMG, then the risk is that technology could give governments, third-party companies, the insights, how productive we are. It could self-incriminate us because they could give us certain, for example, passwords. And if it's our password from our bank account, our brain will react to that, would recognize that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of privacy issues. And some of the countries stay on the path of invading that privacy, such as China. Kids are wearing those wearables to track.
It's so crazy in the education system.
It is crazy.
If you haven't seen that and you're listening to the episode, what can they Google search to actually find the video that is the report on the bans that are being used in Chinese education?
Surely, I don't know how to Google it, but maybe like mental privacy, China, kids, school.
Education. It's really, really crazy. I mean, Joe Rogan was speaking about it on one of his episodes recently as well. It's insane.
Yeah, and we should learn from that. In the United States right now, we are at that, inception stage where neurotechnology companies, they're starting up. Like there are a couple of big players. And I think it would be incredible if we come up with maybe privacy policy that major players, government, corporations would agree upon, that these are the principles, these are the rules. And when, for example, venture funds invest in startups, they invest under those conditions and in the investment documents.
Then the investors can't push.
Yeah, because if one VC fund says, I will invest only under these terms, but another VC firm would invest without those terms, companies might want to use the data, sell the data. So it's either everyone agrees, or, some people can take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And although consumers are kind of worried and educated about that, but even the companies that I'm advising, I actually gifted the book to one of my founders, so she reads it, because even as an early stage startup, we get approached by pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, and the possibility of being like acquired early on when you don't have much money and you kind of like, you don't know.
Yeah, you got to hold on.
Yeah, you got to hold on, but it's hard to have that negotiation power because data is gold. And neural data is gold. The brain-computer interface, that's going to be I think the biggest advancement in this decade, when we can integrate the brain with an interface, so our brain can use the computer power to do a lot of things like typing, driving, and that interface will have access to our raw brain data. And I think it's really important, in parallel with creating these technologies, BCIs, brain-computer interfaces, to come up with ethical considerations, because it's much easier to negotiate something before it's $1 billion, $1 trillion thing. Because then so much money at stake that people might not want to agree.
It compromises people. 100%. I want to take this back a step. There's founders that are listening to this episode right now, and potentially on that precipice, maybe they're in the pre-seed or seed round. They haven't necessarily made those first deals with VCs. They still have the gift and benefit of time to get some of these processes right. But as a founder, no one's teaching you ethics. So unless you go and learn it for yourself, which, I've invested quite heavily in understanding how to think philosophically, ethically, because to me, sovereignty and freedom and a compassionate world, like that's at the core of what I want everything I create to kind of magnify. But for a lot of founders, you don't know what you don't know. So even taking it back to the basics, what are some of the kind of the 101 questions that a founder could ask to bring their thinking process into the world of ethics when it comes to this conversation?
I think a couple of questions to ask yourself: whether you believe that the data belongs to individuals, whether you...
And why?
Yeah. I think it all comes from the mission. Like, what are you trying to achieve besides making money? And for example, I believe in empowering people. And from the economical perspective, I think that intention and mission will make you successful economically, because people would trust you if you care about them, if you care about their data. And I think more and more customers, they become aware of that. And especially if you're building something in B2C market, then I think that privacy might come as one of the most important things later on when you would try to sell
100%.
the product. And maybe right now it's not as prevalent, but once we will have many solutions, I think those folks that have ethical privacy policy in place and they do not sell the data.
And
they'll end up security. That's going to be the in order to be able to sell to the consumers. But I understand how hard it is to negotiate, to advocate for that. That's why I think by even this conversation, right, I was educated about that because Nida Farhani educated me, right? She presented the book and she wrote about that, and she's also a lawyer, and she's been working with a couple of VC funds. So I think it's important to pass it along
100%.
And have that conversation, and only then we will be able to come up with something that works. And one of the examples that I really like, analogy, so in venture world, most of the founders in early stage, they raise money through simple agreement for future equity, right? That's the universal, right? That's the easy universal thing.
But you're not negotiating complex, so
exactly,
and beautiful agreements.
Exactly. So before, it was so expensive to raise money. Everyone has their own terms, negotiating non-consequential things. Now it's universal. Everyone is using it. It made life of startups and venture funds much easier.
This doesn't exist outside of the United States, by the way.
That is true. Yeah. But we have one of the most evolved,
Sure.
venture.
It's very, very founder friendly.
very founder friendly. And maybe, just maybe, we can have a privacy policy like that that handles the data.
Something that simple.
Something that's simple that you can just like download and
That's creative.
change that. Yeah, I would love that. And if we change something, everyone can run a red line. I'm like, why did you change that?
Yeah.
What are you trying to achieve?
It opens up the conversation.
It opens up the conversation.
Yeah, I like that. There's so much to this that I want to touch on. Just going back to the consumer, right? So I had an experience this morning. I joined a gym. I won't say which one. And part of the gym membership is you get the heart rate monitor. They monitor all of your biometric data. And I was like, this is cool. Can usually have to do this myself. But when I downloaded the app where, your data goes onto and you can review, it asked to sync with my Apple Health data and all of the other apps that track any health data. And so I asked the administrator, what's your privacy policy? Like, is your company potentially going to sell my data to a third party? And they didn't know, and I could tell that she probably has never been asked that question before. And so it prompted me to, and I was thinking about the fact we were going to be having this conversation today. A lot of consumers aren't aware, they say yes, except they share their data. They don't necessarily understand what that might mean for them. And so I don't like going to this sort of like dystopian version of the conversation too often. But what are some of the risks from a consumer's point of view in having your data be shared with companies that you really have no control over?
Yeah, one of the things that jumps out of me, security breach, right? If the security measures that the company has in place, they're not strong, or there's a breach, all of your data gets leaked. And imagine you lost, social security number. That's going to be pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. There might be fraud. Your bank account might get emptied just because you lost that. But the freedom of thought, if our thoughts get leaked, that could cause, I think, a lot of issues. Maybe it could even incriminate you. One of the examples I've heard that, for example, if there was a fraud case at work, right? And if workers have something wearable that tracks the thoughts and brain waves, and then the company will be able to track, who will conspiring. So a lot of the data might come, to surface. So that risk I mentioned.
What about just basic health data? So things like, if you're into fitness and you're measuring the basics, maybe for a female, it's like your menstrual cycle, and then, fitness data like your heart rate variability, weight, these kinds of things. Are there really realistically any risks in this data no longer being owned purely by the individual that you see?
That is a good question. Except for marketing, right off the bat, I don't know what else can happen. Yeah, but I'm sure there are risks, maybe the identification of suspects. Yeah, I'm not sure, because this is the beginning of how data being available massively because of the digital health and wearables.
Marketing's a big component, we shouldn't just put that as like something
in reality that's already happening.
Think about the specificity that marketing can start to hit you.
Yeah,
when it knows, even think about your menstrual cycle as a female. If they know exactly where you're at in your hormone cycle, like that's pretty personal information.
Yeah,
I think in the hands of a genius marketer could definitely be weaponized.
Definitely. And neural marketing based on neuroscience, that's the strongest marketing. And that's one of the things the book is talking about.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I kind of accepted that honestly as a reality, because as a content creator, I put myself out there, and I kind of accepted that. Yeah. My voice, by the way, for example, voice, AI can analyze the voice, whatever you put on Instagram, and can detect health issues. Can detect
blood pressure,
altered states of consciousness,
emotion.
Yeah, all of that is happening. One of the companies that I'm advising, they're doing that. So like it's already a reality. That's why I said marketing is like that manipulation is already here.
Yes. Yeah. So, just sit with that and think about that. And maybe we do another episode specifically on that. But it's important to touch on, I want to empower, founders to think about this. But if you're not a founder and you're listening to this episode and you're just a consumer of technology, and you're at the moment completely unaware, completely unconscious of some of these, tracks, the The reason I think empowerment is important is because the more time you spend on technology and the more this data is used to target you, your consciousness, we started this conversation with you sharing how important it is to be free in your consciousness and to be in a healthy state. If companies have this kind of data on you, they know what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, when you're feeling it, and they're targeting you, you don't have as much agency over your consciousness and your thinking and your mood as you think you might. And that's a serious challenge, I think, in today's world. Like, I often think about the quality of our attention span, and I give the example that back in philosophical times, Greek philosophers were spending decades on a single thought, and the extension of that thought and the ethical considerations of that thought, and developing out these very complex frameworks of thinking, which allowed others to engage in those concepts. Whereas now our attention span is a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
So what are the additional layers of adversity that we might be putting humanity through as a result of not even being able to think and focus on some of these more important, meaningful conversations as a mass population? I would say that based on some of that understanding, not everyone even has the attention span to sit down and have a conversation like this,
Actually, you are right. And I was recently talking to one of the founders, and she was saying, like, without some sort of stimulation, she wouldn't be able to have the deep conversation. I was like, wow.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
What was that for her, out of curiosity?
Yeah. I'm not going to go into details. But I do ask them because especially founders, they live in that state of, fear-based survival, ups and downs, and like doing everything at once, and like a lot of fear and uncertainty. And so that deficit of attention is prevalent.
Yes.
And
that's so important.
That is so important. And actually, so in addition to, as I mentioned, I create content, legal tips for startups, but I added to that startup mindset for a founder, growth mindset, and healthy lifestyle, because I believe in order to survive the journey, you need to really master yourself, your thoughts, your body, because you can't run like that. Because the startup life cycle, it's ups and downs. It's very high or very low. And so for your mental health, it is not healthy. And that's why it is really important to support yourself on that journey. And I believe in a holistic approach to that. And the solutions that currently on the market in terms of helping us to focus, I don't think that they're working, right? Drugs, alcohol, coffee. So it's like up and down. It aggravates everything. And mindfulness, that's the solution. But in order to get to the point where mindfulness really makes an impact on you, that you notice the difference, you have to be consistent. It's practice. And I talk about that on social media, and I hope that AI would be one of the tools that would give the feedback to you, like, how are you feeling right now? Maybe you should take a break. Maybe you should put the phone away. It will help you to identify where you lost the focus and come back to that. Like in meditation, when you're self-aware, you really notice when
your mind drifts.
Yes. And that is like it's basically muscle curl, right? And when you notice that, you're like, oh, I got this, So in addition to meditation and healthy eating, the food is super important for your mood, because we don't realize how what we eat sometimes affect us. We sometimes don't realize how food always affects us. And I recently did organ cleanse, and I didn't do caffeine. I didn't drink any alcohol, and it was mostly protein, veggies, really cleaning the body. And I realized how much energy I have and focus. And I'm generally healthy, so I didn't know that the effect will be that profound. And that made me realize, how generally healthy, but still a little bit of coffee here and there and a little bit of alcohol really throws me off and increases anxiety, decreases that attention span.
It's such an important conversation. If every founder found this sense of freedom inside themselves to really understand that your thoughts and feelings and your vision is something that you can direct.
Yeah.
And the quality of that as you step into negotiations, as you step into, leadership of your team, the culture you set, and we're all, guilty of not being that perfect human all the time. But even just the introduction to understand that you are the creator. It's not happening to you. I had an 18-year-old entrepreneur ask me yesterday, actually, what's your advice to someone who wants to kind of go that extra mile and last the journey? And I said to him, like, it's self-mastery, it's emotional resilience, because you can go and learn all of the practicalities of what it takes to build a business. But when your runway is at a critical level and you just don't know if you're going to get the investment deal in time, and you still have to show up and lead your team, there's no book, that can help you in that. It's your relationship with yourself, how much you love yourself, how much you believe in yourself, and how okay you're going to be no matter what happens. That allows you to endure those difficult times. And it's not a discussion I hear enough founders have. It's really not. So I'm grateful for you being a voice for that. But yeah, it's so important, especially in Silicon Valley. It's not culturally, normal to talk about this, I don't think. Any other questions that a founder should be asking when it comes to ethics? Because I don't want to skip over that. So who owns the data, and what does your mission require in terms of data ownership? Anything else?
And I think having those conversations with your partners, like team, and venture investors who invest in you.
Mm-hmm.
I think voicing it out and setting those principles early on, this is important. And I think that could be one of the appealing things to hire great talent, because great talent, it's not only the competence, but ethics. Can you trust that person?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that would be appealing for the great talent, that you are creating something from the place of, love.
Yeah.
Out of that fear that you need to create something, make quick buck, and, sell it. Which is, I don't know, that exists, nothing wrong, not judging, but
is it the business of the future though? Let's be real.
I think so. Yeah. That is the business of the future.
It's something that's anchored in deeper truth, in a deeper sense of meaning.
Yeah. And although honestly with social media, I was recently analyzing how the social media is now can be used against humanity, right? Like with the shortening the attention span. But at the same time, how many opportunities it created for people to be independent and free to make money by being your own boss. Even TikTok, Instagram, many people make money by doing that. They are able to quit their corporate job and do what they love. So there is nothing perfect, I think. We are not perfect. No, like AI is not perfect. So there are pros and cons, and it's a matter of what is your intention, and from that, how you utilize the tools and resources. So the tools don't own you.
Yes.
You use the tools.
100%. This has been such a brilliant conversation, Kristina, and I just want to leave time if there were any other points that you wanted to touch on before we start to wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Nicole, for having that conversation. You personally shifted my mindset when it comes to being integral, that we don't necessarily need AI or technology to be part of our body unless, you're fully paralyzed and there are certain cost-benefit analysis. But as a relatively healthy human being, I think we enough.
Yes.
And I think that was one of the most important things when I was thinking about mental health. I was thinking from the perspective, we need the technology to kind of complete us in a way. But now I approach it differently, and it did affect my investment thesis. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for having that insightful conversation. You mentioned that it's not usual for Silicon Valley to have those conversations, but to be honest with you, I have those conversations pretty frequently. I think you attract what you are.
Yeah.
And I have a little community of Web3 founders and investors. And when we get together, like our monthly, just hanging out together, we talk a lot about spirituality, meaning, intentionality, that everything that we do, that's our way of even the gift that we have.
Yeah.
And I also do hear those conversations among investors. It might not be as pronounced.
Yeah, well, we are the leaders, right? The one that our community have these conversations all the time. So that you can see just the state of the world, the products that are still being created. Like more and more people need to come into your community, into our community, and engage in these conversations. And if you're listening to this and this is your first touch point with this conversation, can they join your community? Can they be a part of more of these conversations?
Yeah, definitely. So in addition to joining the community, and we are launching online community, because I understand not everyone is in Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
So we are launching online community this month. I'm again going to Brazil.
Congratulations.
But I have me and my two partners. We are launching online community of builders, founders. I'm going to be contributing, the legal aspects, the mindset aspects. My other partner, she worked at Google. She's a top community builder in the world. So she will be helping founders how to think about building your community. Because when you're creating a company, you're creating a community. You don't need marketing if you have the community. If you tapped in that intentionality and your service or product taps into that, the need and solves the problem. And if you create community out of that, you found your product market fit. And my social media manager, she works at Meta. She has her own digital marketing agency. So she will be talking about how to grow your audience, because audience is the broader group of people. And from that, you form the community. So we're creating this online community. we will give you the link to the website. We're launching it in a week. And feel free to subscribe to my podcast, Startup Mindset. I called it with the intention that in addition to legal aspect, I will be tapping more and more into mindset.
Great.
And I also have Substack blog post where I write all about legal issues, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube.
What's your handle?
It's Kristina Subbotina, Kristina with K, .esquire, ESQ. Like Esquire, it's the lawyer, thing. Yeah. So Kristina Subbotina ESQ.
We'll put those links, and please reach out to Kristina if you've listened to this episode and let her know what you took from it, the considerations. Join her community and support your amazing work. Kristina, we definitely will seriously appreciate it. This has been such a brilliant and needed conversation.
Thank you. I think the one thing that we fundamentally have in common is love. That's the intention.
Where it ends and begins, my friend.
Yeah, and fear is the opposite of love. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you for listening, my friend. If you enjoyed the show, please let us know by leaving a review or sharing the episode with someone you love and expanding this conversation as far and wide as possible. If you're looking for a community to have conversations with about global affairs, please jump in our Telegram group or join our free think tanks. Thanks for being a part of the shift towards a love